year is 1991. The homeboy Paweł Marszuka founds Techland, a Polish game developer that seems to have consistently released relatively mediocre games with the occasional gem. In 2011, they released Dead Island to a split reception with people either loving it or hating it. 4 years later, they released Dying Light, a fabulous game whose honeymoon period was truly one of the best video game experiences I have ever had.
Game play.
Dying Light is what happens when Assassin's Creed decides to have a one-night stand with Left 4 Dead. As expected from any Assassin's Creed game worth its salt, the parkour is extremely enjoyable and fluid while being weirdly clunky at the same time. Honestly, it's a really hard trick to pull off, and Techland did it perfectly. The zombies' AI is tragically idiotic to the point of comedy. These barely functioning, rotting pieces of meat will straight up shuffle off a building to try and get to you. That shit never gets old. You can jump over them, slide through them, or just drop kick their sorry asses. Kicking zombies off of buildings is absolutely perfect when you just need to blow off steam after you failed your driver's test for the 3rd time. Which I personally have never done. You even get a grappling hook later on, which lets you zip to tops of buildings or structures for quick getaways or a simple get out of jail free card after you fail a jump. Running across rooftops in the denser areas of the open world is exhilarating to say the least. Honestly, the graphics are on the cheaper end of the spectrum, with textures and models giving off a budget feel. But when this game gets in its groove, it has some absolutely stunning vistas up its sleeve. The way zombies explode and are dismembered is extremely gorgeous. The blood is everywhere, and there's this unbelievably satisfying crunch when you cut off a zombie's arm or shattered skull. Sadly, all this window dressing doesn't mean that the combat in this game is good. At all. Early on, zombie combat is frustrating, especially when dealing with larger crowds as they attack you from left and right. The weapons given to you are pipes and wooden planks that result in relentless pounding of zombies with really no feedback or results. There are a couple of Easter eggs hidden in the open world that give you powerful weapons early on, but they end up breaking really easily, so I recommend using them sparingly if you ever get your hands on them. On top of that, the weapon durability system means that eventually your tools are just going to stop damaging enemies altogether. And don't even get me started with human v human combat. These guys will really pull out a pistol or assault rifle on your ass when you don't even have any ranged weapons. On top of this, unlike zombies, just swinging around your weapons won't do anything since they block. The humans you go up against always move around in groups of 2 or more, and this means that one of them is going to be up in your face while the other throws stuff at you from a distance. If you get stuck in this kind of situation, you pretty much just wait for the human to attack, then dodge, and then you get in a few swings, and then repeat. If you have the throw enemy skill, you can just throw them into a spike trap or disarm them. But throughout my playthroughs, this ability has always felt too clunky and reliable to use in combat scenarios. All in all, this means that avoiding combat in the first half of the game is the best option, and probably the more enjoyable option since the focus of Dying Light is the wonderful parkour. The parkour. Haran, which is the Middle Eastern city that the game takes place in, is a wonderful setting for the post-apocalypse, with the slums and Old Town contrasting each other expertly. A lot of buildings have interiors that you can explore and loot. The roads are just wide enough to make jumping across them challenging, but not impossible. The density of each map is phenomenal, with the slums being my preferred map. In the slums, the filth and grime give the game an atmosphere that is majestic. The level designers have put in so much effort to create pathways that intertwine with each other for the player to string together, creating faster and more efficient routes. Just free running in this game is mesmerizing. It expertly captures the feeling of mastery and improvisation that online multiplayer games provide in a relatively single-player environment. Climbing up buildings, hopping from car to car, and running from a zombie horde at night is all fantastic. There are time trials that test your parkour skill and performance in the open world that further reinforce the sensation of speed and agility that this game offers. you might see a supply drop off in the distance with the red smoke, and you start sprinting there before any other NPC gets there. Someone might need some medicine delivered as quickly as possible, and you run like hell to help them. You learn to lure zombie hordes into traps while running. Rival runners come to challenge you in races and skill tests. Movie directors ask you to blow up zombies for them. You're the best runner in all of Haran, with the skill to back it up, and you know it.
ストーリー
In Dying Light, you play as Kyle Crane, who works for the GRE, or Global Relief Effort, who's overseeing the containment of the infection in Haran. This guy named Raiz has some documents that they don't want people seeing, so they send you into the city to recover these documents. That's all you really need to know. Frankly, the story has a lot of problems and issues that really kind of hamper the enjoyment of this game. So, you remember when I said combat should be avoided in the early game, like a minute ago? Yeah, the main quest doesn't give a shit. You're gonna fight zombies and humans, and you're gonna enjoy it. Oh, did our characters do something earlier that you thought would be addressed later in the story? Why would we do that? Stop being a little bitch and go bash this zombie's head in with a useless plank of plywood. The main story is not that fun or engaging. Dying Light truly shines through its gameplay and side missions. Most of these poor idiots stuck living in the post-apocalypse are dumbasses. My god, they make the density of a black hole seem like nothing, and I revel in every moment of it. Doing side quests or listening to NPCs talk is just really fun. They act how I imagine people would act. Especially after this whole pandemic thing, I know for sure a good half of the population would completely act like these ignorant fools. With this game, don't expect The Last of Us. But the self-aware nature lends to a layer of sincerity not found in other games.
プログレッション
I was wondering whether or not to put this section in gameplay, but I didn't know how I would transition, so here we are. So earlier I was complaining about how combat in the early game is really unfun and makes you feel weak. This game's progression system doesn't entirely mitigate that issue, but it does indeed make you feel more powerful. Even in the parkour, the early game makes it feel heavy and slow compared to the late game, where you're pretty much a professional parkourist. Now what this game does that I feel like more games should do is that the progression matches your playstyle. In other words, pretty much every action you do in Haran is affecting one of three main skill trees: Survivor, Power, and Agility. The Legend skill tree is unlocked when you max out one of the previous three, and allows you to power your character up through small stats that can be stacked. Anywho, if you like parkour and just want to run around looting cars and chests, you still earn skill points towards the Agility skill tree, where you can gain more parkour skills. If you actually enjoy combat, like the mad lad you are, you can earn skill points for better abilities by fighting zombies. Then, all the rest of the things you can do in Haran, like doing side missions, doing main missions, doing mini games, adds points to the Survivor skill tree. And when you die, you'll lose a set amount of skill points from that skill tree. This means that you can hone your skill set to your playstyle and experience a skill curve that is absolutely mesmerizing.
マルチプレイヤ
Dying Light is actually kind of a bizarre game when it comes to economy and online. The gear and loot system is reminiscent of Destiny or Borderlands. If you go to the Techland website, you can make an account and input codes that will give you better gear in the game, like Borderlands shift codes. This is to supplement the fact that you can have up to 4 people in your game and play co-op on pretty much any mission. If you leave your game on public, random people will join, and most of the time these people are really cool and also big modders. You can have your game open to zombie attacks where another player joins the game as a powerful enemy and you have to run around killing zombie nests before they kill you and your teammates. Although, I would recommend turning this off when playing alone, as it's really frustrating to go one-on-one with a toxic-ass, powerful zombie dude. There are events that act like raids that grant you powerful weapons, but are only accessible through buying DLC packs. The inclusion of 4-player co-op is actually really welcome in this game, And the fact that Techland is still supporting it like a live service through events and community goals is really respectable. There's even a new expansion coming out called Hell Raid, 5 years after the initial launch of the game. When I first bought it, I thought it was a single player experience, but the online component begs for a group of friends just to mess around and have fun. Frankly, this is how I imagined Fallout 76 would be when it launched, but after Bethesda fumbled that hydrogen bomb, this is actually a better alternative than that depressing heap of manure.
The following.
A year after the base game was launched, Techland released the following expansion, which is a new map with a continued story. There are new missions and game-changing mechanics. The entire design philosophy behind the following seems to contradict everything the base game stands for. Oh, you like the density and urban environment of Haran? Here's open fields and mountains filled with zombies. You actually enjoyed the relatively complex parkour system? Here's a car to explore the grand open world. You see, the last time the story lacked mystery? How about a mystery so thick it would put Pixar moms to shame? The DLC expansion is awe-inspiring, as it presents the player with a plethora of new gameplay opportunities. You have to repair and maintain a new car that can just bulldoze through zombies. Since using guns attracted zombies before, they give you a crossbow that can take out zombies silently. The base game is so good that there's no way that this expansion is disappointing at all. After I beat Dying Light, I immediately hopped into the following, expecting more Dying Light. And I did indeed get more Dying Light. The following seems to make every mistake that generic open worlds make. Traversal is frustrating, not only because the car is actually a stick of melting butter that has wheels attached to it, making driving on roads unfun. The piece of junk clips on everything and has trouble going up hills. And when it inevitably gets stuck, and you have to get out and run to your destination, the flat environment is so boring. I had PTSD flashbacks to MGS5 to Phantom Pain, where you would run for minutes on end across the barren wasteland that is Afghanistan for the sake of the next adrenaline rush. You can't go off-road either to shorten the trip because your buggy can't go through trees or off-road unless it's a field of tall grass. Combat is still mediocre at best. There are characters that seem genuinely interesting that you never see again. The story is actually slightly better than what we got before, with the mystery actually being intriguing. But the following amplifies my problems with so many open world games that it makes the space between points of interest meaningless and boring. The thing that made Dying Light so fun was that the space actually mattered, by giving the player the ability to parkour and make on-the-fly decisions while creating their own path from point to point. The following forces you to stick to the roads and use clunky driving mechanics that bog down the entire experience. If you have the option, I don't recommend buying this expansion at all whatsoever.
Conclusion.
Dying Light, like so many others, is not a perfect game. But that combination of stellar parkour and subpar combat make the whole experience addicting. Annoyingly lovable side characters fully fleshing out the experience in subtle ways is heartwarming. While the expansions feel underwhelming, the effort and love that the developers have invested into this game really shows. Unlike what the title of the game suggests, I think that it's self-evident that this game shines a light full of hope and life. And that is the beauty of Dying Light.